Today, we're diving into a set of ideas so powerful, so fundamental, that they belong to you from the moment you exist, no matter who you are or where on Earth you live. We're talking about human rights.
But before we get into all the laws and the official definitions, let's just start with a feeling. Really think about it. What does it mean to you to be treated with dignity? That feeling right there, that deep-seated sense of your own worth, that's the real foundation of everything we're about to discuss.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with what human rights actually are. Then we'll look at their core principles. We'll break them down into what's called 3 generations, see how they went from just an idea to actual international law, and finally, we'll get into why they matter so much, right here, right now.
Okay, so let's jump right in. What are human rights? At their heart, they're built on a simple but totally revolutionary idea that there's a universal standard for respect and freedom that every single person is born into.
When you peel back all the layers, it all boils down to one powerful concept: human dignity. It's this belief that just by existing, you deserve to be treated with respect, to have freedom, and to be seen as an equal. This is the bedrock, the why behind every other right.
The United Nations has a great way of putting it. And on this slide, there are 2 words that are just absolutely crucial: inherent and regardless. Inherent means you're born with them. They're not a gift from a government that can be taken back. And regardless means they apply to you no matter what. Your race, your gender, where you're from, none of it matters. So, if these rights belong to everyone, what are the ground rules? What makes them actually work? Well, that brings us to the core principles, the features that really give human rights their punch. These principles are all woven together. They're universal, meaning for everyone, everywhere. They demand equality and are non-discriminatory. They're meant to be protected by the law, and they're indivisible. And this is a big one. It means you can't just pick and choose. The right to vote is just as important as the right to education. And finally, they're inalienable, which means they can't be taken away from you. But you see that little asterisk? There's a small catch we need to talk about.
So about that asterisk, while your rights are inalienable, they aren't totally absolute. For example, a person's right to liberty, their freedom, can be limited if they're found guilty of a crime, but only after a fair legal process. This exception is there to make sure that exercising one person's rights doesn't come at the expense of justice or public safety.
Now, the universe of human rights is huge. It's a lot to take in. So to make it all a bit more manageable, experts often group them into 3 generations. Now, this isn't about which one is older or better. It's really about showing how our understanding of what a right is has grown over time.
And this table here lays it out perfectly. The first generation is all about classic civil liberties. Think freedom from government interference, like your right to free speech. The second generation, that's about rights to basic things you need to live a good life, like the right to education or healthcare. And that third generation is the newest, focusing on collective rights for whole communities, like the right to a clean environment. See how each one builds on the last?
So we have all these powerful ideas and principles. But how do you take a philosophy, a moral belief, and turn it into actual international law? Well, that's the story of how human rights went from being a beautiful idea to a global standard.
In the aftermath of World War II, the world basically came together and said, never again. And that determination led to these 3 huge documents you see here. The 1948 Declaration was the big, bold mission statement. Then the 2 covenants that came later in '66, those were the teeth. They made the principles legally binding for any country that signed on. Altogether, this is what we call the International Bill of Human Rights.
But really, that first one, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UDHR, was the real game changer. Think about it. For the first time in history, countries from all over the world agreed on a single document that spelled out the rights of all people. It set a common standard of dignity for everyone.
Okay, so these laws exist. They're on the books. But that brings us to maybe the most critical question of all. Why do they matter right now in our world today? Because, as we all know, this mission for universal dignity is, it's far from over. This is the promise of human rights. This is the goal. When they're respected, they protect our individual dignity. They promote justice. They act as a shield against abuse and discrimination. They're the foundation of a strong democracy, and they create the conditions where peace and progress can actually happen. But that amazing promise often runs into a pretty harsh reality. We see these massive challenges every single day: poverty, discrimination, repression, war. Human rights aren't just some nice declaration. They are designed to be a tool, a weapon, to actively fight these very forces. So, how do we push forward?
How do we close that gap between the promise and the reality? Well, one of the most powerful tools we have is education. When we understand our own rights, and just as importantly, the rights of others, we help build a culture where dignity and equality aren't just ideas on paper, but a lived reality.
So, to wrap it all up, human rights are so much more than an abstract idea. They are the essential moral and legal foundation we need to build societies that are free, just, and truly dignified.
And that leaves us with one final thought. These rights don't just exist in treaties, they exist in our everyday lives, in how we treat each other. So the real question for all of us is, what can we do, starting today, to help protect them for everyone?